to a novel show, a place where no one's going to shame you for your quarantine haircut, but you can't hide it under a beanie. So for this episode, I figured we'd cover the completely uncontroversial classic book, Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Some of you all have heard about this book, I'm sure, or at least the movie. Depending on what generation you are, there's a greater chance of you having heard of it or seen the movie, or maybe even read the book. For a long time when I was a kid, I hated the movie just because to me it was so endlessly depressing. Because I was a kid, I didn't understand that was kind of the point. But then eventually, sometime when I got older, I just decided I was on one of my classical book kicks, and I was just like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and read the book. Why not? See what it's all about. Because I remember when I was a kid, my father told me about the book, and he said he didn't like the movie. And he said he didn't like the movie because, in his opinion, because of Scarlett O'Hara. He said they changed a book character that's one of the strongest, most ruthless female heroines, kind of, in literary history, and they changed her to just be kind of like whiny and complaining in the movie. And so I do kind of agree with that, honestly, after reading the book. Let's get first thing out of the way, of course. Slavery is wrong. We all agree that slavery is wrong. This book is 100-something years old now, you all. Okay, let's judge it as a book, all right? Of course, the motif in the book about feeling nostalgic for this antebellum time period, it doesn't fly anymore. Yeah, sure. But the point of the book, the themes of the book transcend really uncomfortable topics like that. So let's think about some of the themes, let's think about some of the characters, and let's think about the writing style. So, for Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, she wrote this, became a huge hit back then because people were nostalgic for a time of values and pageantry and supposed independence and stuff like that. So this book, in a lot of ways, it's kind of almost a fantasy book. It idealizes this time to such a degree you can't go into it saying, oh well, that's how things really were. So I guess it really wasn't that bad back then, huh? Of course it was. They had slavery. But looking at it just as a novel, how good is it? It's really good. My father was right. Scarlett O'Hara in the book, she is really more of an anti-hero, honestly. Like, she is so ruthless. Sometimes it'll shock you. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the character actually did that or said that or engineered these other characters' deaths. Whoa, that kind of can't come out of nowhere. So, for this book, you have to kind of recognize going into it that if you want to read this book, you got to get used to having a main character that's going to do some real, let's see, how to talk to the kids these days. Going to do some real Breaking Bad kind of stuff. That sort of morally gray or just completely morally wrong stuff. In her mind, to survive, for the survival of her family, her way of life, all this kind of. But one of the big themes is how, in the end, it's really kind of all pointless. Because just like the idealized version of, the Southern Belle and the Southern plantation homes has now been completely eradicated, it's gone. Her idealized world is also gone too. And no matter how much she schemes and backstabs and, stands strong for stuff, it doesn't matter. She's not going to bring it back. And the other characters in their own ways have to deal with that too. Now, one of the controversial things in this book, besides obviously slavery, is the portrayal of black people. There was a character in here, the infamous Mammy character, and this is just me personally, but I cannot stand colloquial style writing. When they write a character's dialogue, and if they're writing a Southern character, they drop all the G's and everything ends with an apostrophe. If they're writing, some character from the Midwest or the Northeast or something like that, and they throw things in there too. It's one of the big reasons why I have a lot of trouble reading Twain. I like Twain's stories, concepts. I like the themes there. The characters are amazing. Some of his turns of phrase are just incredible. Of course, some of the wittiest stuff out there. But how he writes dialogue, man, I can't stand it. It bothers me. This book had that same effect too. Whenever one certain character came into the scenes, I would just start skimming through all her dialogue because I couldn't handle it. Tell your readers, that your character speaks with such and such an accent, but you don't need to write it because it's such a chore to read. Of course, that's just my opinion. If you like that kind of stuff, if you write in that kind of style, you don't have to listen to me. But just for me personally, that's something that always stood out in my mind too, how irritating it was to try and read that dialogue. Now, as far as like would I recommend this story to a modern audience? Yeah, sure. It's a classic. It's one of those books that it's going to make you feel really uncomfortable sometimes, and a lot of classics do. That's one reason why they're a classic. Now, if you go into this and read it and come away with this same idealized view that Scarlett O'Hara has for the Old South, you really kind of do miss a lot of the underlying themes. I know that Margaret Mitchell, the author of the book, she had a lot of those, or she professed to have a lot of those same kind of ideas. That's why she wrote it. But, you know, if you're a death of the author kind of reader, then you're not going to care about that. But if you're an intention kind of reader, you have to look at her intentions, but then see also the evidence in the own book, basically, about that. Yeah, it is sad that we've lost this time of, you know, history and pageantry and blah, blah, blah kind of stuff. It was sad when the French aristocracy was put to death, you know, in the French Revolution, or when Tsar Nicholas and his family all died in the Russian Revolution. But being sad that that certain style of life or something like that is gone now, it's just one of those things. That's what happens in history. You can be sad about it, sure, but you have to recognize that, you know, that's the way history it is, and we always move on, and, you know, there's good and bad elements to things, and so obviously that would be a bad element to this book, but it shouldn't keep you from enjoying the book as a whole. As far as like a book comparison to the movie, I'll do that in a different video. I would say if you enjoyed the movie, you'll like the book even better, in my opinion. Even though we got the iconic performances of Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler, the book characters to me are much more realized, and Scarlett O'Hara especially is such a more interesting character. She has more depth to her. She really does come across as like a Machiavellian. If you were not on her side, she's an extreme villain. But since she is our protagonist, she is a definite anti-hero to me. So if you're interested in Gone with the Wind, like I said, check it out. Don't go getting this book just to read it to be offended. It's a 1,000-page brick. Don't waste your time doing that kind of stuff. Read it if you think there's stuff in there you would enjoy, and read it if there's stuff in there that interests you and you can critique it in sort of a background way while you read. But like I said too, if you want a strong female protagonist in literature, that's one of the strongest. And she has a lot of qualities that are not very noble, but so do a lot of, you know, heroic male protagonists. So check it out sometime if you feel up to it. And to end the video today, tell you about my shirt. My shirt today is from the International Cryptozoology Museum, which is in Portland, Maine. I sure hope it's still open. Anybody that's up near New England, if you ever find yourself near Portland, Maine, definitely go check it out. It's a super fun, awesome little museum with cryptozoological creatures everywhere. And if you're interested in good, bad movie reviews with a twist, or you want travel videos, I got my other channels linked below this. And anyway, hopefully you have some good reading and everyone is doing well during our endless quarantine time. I guess it's a perfect time to read. And so if you have any of your thoughts you want to add to the comments or your suggestions, feel free to. And I will be back again later with a new book. Take care.